Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's YouTube brought to you by ICHARS, Institute of Clinical Hypnosis and We are so happy to have you with us as we continue our live series focused on meaningful conversations around mental health, healing, and personal growth. At ICHARS, we specialize in training mental health professionals in integrative, evidence based therapeutic approaches like cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy. Today's session is centered on an extremely important and sensitive topic: post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. We'll be exploring what PTSD really is, how it shows up in everyday life, and how therapeutic techniques can support individuals on their path to healing after trauma. We are joined by Nitin Shah, the founder of ICHARS and a pioneer in blending hypnosis with CBT, NLP, and mindfulness to create some really powerful therapeutic outcomes. With years of experience and a passion for mental health advocacy, Nitin brings clarity, compassion, and deep insight into every conversation. We are looking forward to an insightful discussion today. Feel free to share your thoughts or your questions in the comments, and let's get started.
Perfect. And all of you who are joining us on who are joining us on YouTube, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those questions. And please let us know whether we are audible, that you're able to hear us clearly, you're able to look at us clearly. If yes, then that will be great. Yes, Komal. And thank you, Komal, for hosting the session, for taking this forward with us.
Most welcome. I'm really excited to be here. And it's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. I get to learn so much. And yeah, let's begin. So, the first thing, Nitin, that I wanted to begin with actually is asking you what exactly is PTSD? And basically, how do you think it's different from general stress or anxiety after a difficult experience?
Okay. So let's break PTSD down, right? So post traumatic stress disorder, which means someone is having intense stress and stress is so high that it can be called a disorder. So stress at a clinical level being experienced by something after they've gone through a trauma,
Okay.
right? So post traumatic stress disorder. Now with PTSD, one of the highlights is that people generally end up seeing flashes, and
Mm-hmm.
those flashes are what causes them to go through intense anxiety and stress and discomfort,
Okay.
right? So for example, someone may have been through, okay, so right now, because of the kind of world that we are living in, so let's say there is an army official who has been a part of a war. They were a part of a war decades ago.
Right.
Today, something happens, and all of a sudden those flashes of war comes in their mind. And
Right.
as that flash comes into their mind, they literally in their mind experience as if they're in that situation, in that event right now. Okay. And all that response of stress, anxiety, which is a result of that my survival is at stake right now, all of that gets triggered. So
Right.
people would have flashes, they will be hyper vigilant, they're constantly looking out for if there is a threat
Mm-hmm.
in their life. They are very anxious. These will be some of the highlighting factors as far as PTSD is concerned. But the important thing is they've gone through a trauma. The stress is at a level which is very intense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's debilitating in many ways, and that they are hyper vigilant. These will be the core factors. To come to the second part, how is it different from normal stress and anxiety?
Hmm.
Right? General stress and anxiety is more about certain stressors that are there in my environment today, or certain things that may go wrong tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And in stressors and in general stress and anxiety, you don't really have flashes in your mind which create the panicky kind of a situation. So that will
Right.
be the key difference between PTSD and what we are talking about, right? What you had asked me about, which is stress and anxiety.
Perfect. So you had actually mentioned the example that you had taken was of someone from the war zone, right? Someone's been into like a has gone to war and now no longer is there. But I want to actually understand that जब हम trauma की बात करते हैं, is it just limited to war-like situations or natural disasters, or can trauma actually be everyday affairs also?
See, so trauma means different things for different people, right? A very simplistic layman's way of looking at trauma would be that when you're in a situation where you feel your survival is at stake,
Right,
right? And you find yourself incapable of cope up with that situation. Okay? This
right,
will be a very layman kind of a definition. But the idea is that trauma does not necessarily mean that you've gone through a war or natural disaster, as you put earlier. It could
right.
be from day to day life situations. It could be events which, for someone else, may not even
Mm-hmm.
be a big problem. But for
Yeah,
someone else, it could actually be a trauma.
absolutely. So I love the last line because I think this is where we don't really understand experiences. We end up feeling that just because हमें उस situation में problem नहीं होगी तो दूसरे, how can others call it trauma? But actually, thank you for clarifying this because someone's experience can be traumatic to them and may just be very normal to us.
So, on a lighter note, like we put it,
Yeah.
for someone who has been trying to get married at the age of 40 and not finding out the right person, right? And they've
Right.
gone through these multiple experiences, multiple
I know.
rejections. For
Yeah.
them, this could be a trauma. But for
Actually.
a 2.5-year-old child, not being
Yes.
able to get a balloon that everyone else in the room has,
I know.
and they
Yeah.
want it and they are not getting it, could actually be a trauma.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very important to put this out there for the people to understand. Yeah. Okay. So now that we're talking about this, what do you think are certain signs, right? That certain signs, certain symptoms. I know you've spoken about this in the beginning, but certain subtle signs that can actually help us realize that actually what we are going through is PTSD. So I know that nightmares or flashes uh, are definitely one of the key signs and symptoms when we talk about PTSD. But what are the subtler signs? Something जो बहुत regular है and can be actually overlooked in our day-to-day life.
So, apart from the ones that we've already
Mm-hmm.
spoken about, right? For PTSD, flashes will be one which will be most prominent and it is also
Right.
evident. Now, the problem is that it's evident for the person who's
Okay.
experiencing it. For other people, they keep feeling, but this event has
Yeah.
happened. So why is it bothering you
Mm-hmm.
today? So that will be one key component to keep in mind. Second is they would be constantly looking at whether their life is a threat,
Okay.
right? And when you are actually talking to them, having a conversation with them, they are literally constantly on the
Mm-hmm.
edge. So that is the second one. Third, sometimes people can be high functioning and yet they may have
Right.
PTSD. Where in their day to day life you would feel that you know what that अच्छा जॉब है अच्छा काम है रिलेशनशिप भी अच्छा है सब तो अच्छा चल
Mm-hmm.
रहा है and yet all of a sudden certain days you will notice that they literally feel as if there is this panicky
Mm-hmm.
reaction
Mm-hmm. Right.
and they are not able to explain to you why this panicky reaction is
Right.
there, right? So these would be some of the ones that I would associate with PTSD. The reason I'm not going into more subtler differences because then it can be similar to other stressors and general
Right.
anxiety and then it becomes more confusing.
Brilliant. Makes sense. Yeah. Uh, okay. So again, you very rightly pointed out that a few of us can be high functioning as a result of which, our day to day life or our relationships do not get impacted. But I've also heard of a lot of people that their PTSD tends to have a lot of impact on their day to day functioning and categorically their relationships, right? So, if you could just quickly touch upon what would that look like?
See, so any which ways, when someone is going through these kind of experiences
Mm-hmm.
where they cannot control the
Mm-hmm.
triggers, right? So there are certain triggers which trigger those flashes, and those flashes then lead to the response that they
Right.
have, which would mean that managing jobs will become
Mm-hmm.
difficult. There'll be a lot of helplessness, frustration that they
Mm-hmm.
experience that can lead to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
anger. right? And then generally this anger, this frustration gets
Yeah.
blurted out on people around you in your family. So that would be one factor. Second is the person who is in a relationship with this person who's experiencing
Right.
PTSD. They can feel very helpless because even if this person, if the partner loves the person a lot, they want to be able to
Yeah.
help that person. At worst, they will just not be able to understand why the other person is going through the pain that they are going through, right? And at best, you will try to empathize with them, but yet you feel very helpless. So, what do I do to be able to help this person now?
Absolutely.
So, sometimes relationship break not because the other partner does not care for the
Right.
person. But you've heard people at times saying in relationship, I love you too much to see you in
Yeah.
so much of pain. So sometimes that actually becomes a problem because the partner also begins to feel so helpless, so worthless that I can't even help that one person who's so important
Right.
for me. So if I can't help that, what do I do? Maybe at least I can push myself out of the situation so that I am not in
Yeah.
that problem. The uh,
Person.
person who is experiencing
Yeah.
PTSD. So there
Yeah.
could be, malab, this is one of the reasons why it affects relationships so dramatically. Plus, if they are not able to manage jobs, they are not able to keep jobs, and obviously finances become a problem.
Right.
So then all of that creates a ripple effect, which over a period of time can lead to major issues in relationships.
Just an extension. And is it likely or how possible is it for someone with PTSD to be aggressive? And the reason why I'm sort of putting this out there is because when we watch a lot of movies and series, जिसमें PTSD को portray किया जाता है, usually one of the markers is them having like a blowout or a very aggressive instinct. Now, in my understanding, it may or may not happen, but I would love to hear what your opinion is about this.
So it's both. Okay, so think of it this way. When I said that they feel that they are in crisis,
Right.
right? What are the general responses that we have to crisis?
Yeah.
It will generally be fight or flight. Fight would then
Absolutely.
mean that there is a lot of energy in the system and that anger then bursts out, right?
Correct.
And at times it
Yeah.
can burst out in places where it may not be warranted.
Right.
Certain other people may become more withdrawn,
Hmm.
right? So while they may
Hmm.
still have anger bouts, but you might
Mm-hmm.
not even know that they have anger bouts because they have it, they go onto the top of the building and then they shout. And so there are a lot of ways
Yeah.
in which people are able to camouflage that,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So is it necessary that people will uh, have those anger spouts? The answer is not. In some cases, does it happen? The answer is yes.
Great. Okay. So now I think we've sort of covered what PTSD majorly looks like. Let's move on to the most important part, right? Is healing actually possible?
Okay, my personal opinion is healing. So let's define what is healing.
Right.
So there is one where I have a
Yeah.
problem.
Mm-hmm.
Can I resolve that problem in a way in which it no longer exists in my life?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Second is, can I learn to cope up with it in a way in which it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers me right now?
Okay.
Right? One of these two will be possible. For some people,
Okay.
they may be able to address it at its core. Some people will be able to address it in a way in which it stops bothering them. They're able to cope up with it and manage it very effectively. To an extent, almost like that they don't have a problem with this.
Right.
So, is it
Right.
possible? The answer is yes. But easier said than done.
And what do you think the journey actually looks like for someone who's suffered through PTSD and say they come to you, right? What do you think the journey of healing actually looks like? Is it linear? Is it
Okay. So let me first explain what happens in PTSD with people, and then we can come to the healing part of it because then it becomes easier to understand the context of how we work, what processes we use, and why those processes are so useful. Right?
brilliant? Yeah.
So when there are flashes,
Mm-hmm.
people have a tendency to go back into that memory, and it's almost like they're reliving that memory. So somehow in that moment, for the person, They are not able to distinguish between what is happening in their life today and the flash that they are re-experiencing right now. Okay? Somehow that present and the past is getting muddied. It becomes overlapping. And why is it happening? Because the person gets literally associated into the memory. It's almost
Right.
like I said earlier, they're reliving it. Okay? Now, what we need to do is be able to find a way where the client, when they have those flashes, can
Mm-hmm.
observe those flashes from a distance. So no, they know there is a flash happening, but they also know it's a flash that is happening. It's not something that is happening in their life right now,
Right.
right? So this is one major part of the work that we do with clients to actually be able to help them witness that even from as an outsider and be able to create the distinction that they are not reliving it, they are observing it, they are witnessing it.
Right.
One. Then there's the second part that even when I witness it, it may still trigger a degree of
Yeah.
discomfort in me. So what
Right.
do I do about that discomfort and how do I learn to manage that? Right. So broadly, these are the two primary things that we have to focus on when we are working with clients who have PTSD. Traditionally, you have techniques like CBT, EMDR, which focus on working with these clients.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer using cognitive psychotherapy simply because it takes the best of all of this and then is
Right.
able to add additional components wherever required. So the
Right.
process that we will use, while we will do a sequence of things, but the core process that we will use would revolve around one, helping people get into a really resourceful state, where even before they go through a process,
Mm-hmm.
they are experiencing themselves to be in, there are these days when we wake up in the morning and we feel, what, aaj to aane do, I can handle whatever comes my way
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
actually want them to get into that space, that state first. So just give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first step is to be able to help them get into that kind of a resourceful, powerful state where
Right.
even before they begin, they know I emotionally, at least in the beginning, I'm equipped to deal with whatever comes my way. We will anchor that state. The reason for anchoring is that the anchor gives them a very easily accessible tool to get into that state again. For those of you who may not know what anchor is, anchors are like an extension of classical conditioning. It's like how people have lucky shirts. When they wear those shirts, they feel very lucky. Similarly, we create certain action points. So this could be one of the action points. That whenever you press the index finger and the thumb closer, and you bring it tightly like this, people can get into that resourceful state immediately. So it's literally like conditioning that state with this particular action. The reason for this is that this the client can do at any time they want to, which means anytime during the process, if they feel that they're feeling uncomfortable, they have a very good resource state to go back to. So that's the first step. Second, we will help them disassociate,
Hmm.
where they will be told to observe that memory like an image in front of them and pin it on a wall.
Right.
So I'm not reliving that memory. I'm not watching the memory again. I'm just looking an image of it pinned on a wall, like a photograph. So this is disassociation. I can see that image from a distance. Then we'll call the double disassociation. We help people float out of their body. So now
Mm-hmm.
they are up in the air, in their imagination, looking at themselves sitting on the chair, looking at that memory, ka photograph, which is pinned on the wall. So this
Wow.
double disassociation creates a distance between them and that memory.
Right.
Now we start desensitization. So from up in the air, we ask them that they will notice that that particular scene,
Mm-hmm.
that image will get converted into a video and will start playing as if it's a memory that they are observing from a distance. So in
Right.
a double dissociated state, they start observing that particular memory. And then we ask them to go closer and closer as if they're floating closer to the memory, as close as they can go till they are not uncomfortable. When they feel uncomfortable, they further go back. So they're systematically going closer, further away, closer, further away, till eventually they're able to go close enough to the memory and they're able to witness the memory as an outsider. Now, what we are really doing is teaching the mind a different way of processing the memory. That you don't
Right.
need to step into that memory when that flash comes up. You can keep observing that memory from a distance, and the distance can be anywhere which is this large to anywhere which is this close. And
Hmm.
because they're moving closer and closer to that memory, they are also becoming desensitized to it. Okay. Now,
Wow.
what is desensitization? It's almost like, in when we were young, uh, if you were scared of something, so
Mm-hmm.
अगर आपको अंधेरे से डर लगता था, so people would generally not ask you to turn off the lights completely. पहले
Right.
लाइट का थोड़ा सा डिम करेंगे, फिर और डिम करेंगे, so that you can become more and more comfortable with
More.
less
Yeah.
dim, and then
Yeah.
eventually you become comfortable enough even when the lights are not there, hopefully, right?
Right.
So that is an example of desensitization. You're being
Brilliant.
desensitized to certain triggers by
Mm-hmm.
maintaining distance between you and them. Now, so slowly you go close enough, you observe this memory, and once you observe this memory from close quarters without getting emotionally affected by it, it literally would mean that your mind is now learning to reprocess that memory. It's observing it, it's close enough, and yet it's able to maintain its distance. Right? And this is where that resourceful anchor becomes very handy because constantly the client is kept that pressed. And therefore they
Right.
feel confident, empowered enough to be able to observe this memory. Now, once all of this is done, we have
Mm-hmm.
reprocessed the memory. But that part of me which went through the trauma
Yeah.
is still stuck with the trauma.
Yeah.
So the next part of the process is about healing that part. So this is where we bring in parts work or inner child work,
Right.
where you will have a conversation with that part, or the client will have a conversation with that part during the process. We'll help the part realize that this experience was in the past. The part can now let go of this experience. Can also help the part learn what they needed to learn from their experience if there was a learning. Also help the part witness that as a grown up, the client
Mm-hmm.
has more skills, more resources to be able to manage similar situations in future, and more importantly, to avoid such situations if possible. Right? So that gives a lot of confidence to that young, small version of the client who went through the trauma that I'm safe now. And then you help the child feel more empowered, help the child grow up, and then integrate the child. So once you've integrated the child, you've helped the client reprocess the memory, learn
Mm-hmm.
if they need to learn something from that memory. You've
Mm-hmm.
helped the child heal through
Right.
that past trauma, help the child grow up and integrate with you. And now you will want the client to go into the future,
Right.
where they will again observe the triggers where earlier they would have flashes. First, check whether there are flashes happening now or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If the flashes are happening, then
Then
observe
a
those flashes
response.
and check what your response is. Are you still getting sucked into that experience, or are you able to
Mm-hmm.
witness it from outside? Now, all of this together becomes a part of one core process. Now, obviously, before that, we will have an interview. We will understand how do they define their problem, their outcomes, what is the kind of future they're trying to create. We will also try to
Right.
identify if there are specific trigger points that they've identified where the flashes come. So all of this will happen earlier, but eventually this becomes one core process. We are integrating multiple modalities together.
Amazing.
How do we measure the effectiveness of this? After this, the client goes back to their normal life. They come across those triggers that they were bothering them earlier, and they come back and respond to us and let us know what has changed in their life.
Brilliant. I just have one quick question. So you mentioned that when we are doing the inner child healing, we show the younger version of us that now we've gotten the skill set and we've grown up and now we can take care or we can overcome these things. For a lot of us, even as adults, we do not feel that self confidence. So does the resourceful state take care of that, or will there be something additional that you'd like to add on to this point?
So it depends, right? So there are two things. One, while I'm saying that we are helping the child understand that the client has the skills, even before we go there, I want to check whether the client really has the skills or not.
Correct. Right.
So if the client doesn't have the skills, we will also help them develop the requisite skills before we go into this process.
Perfect.
Right? Similarly, when we speak about the emotional state, whether I will be able to feel empowered or not,
Mm-hmm.
generally anchoring will take care of it. But if it doesn't, then there are probably other factors that are coming in the way. We will address those factors before going into anchoring. So before we reach this process, we would
There are
have taken
multiple
care of
steps.
everything that we need to take care of so that the child cannot then look around and say, "Ki, where are you skilled and where are you confident?" So the
Right.
child should know that already you've done the work you needed to do before coming to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Also, in some cases, for example, in a war-like situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who has been through war and they have now retired, they I'm not really sure would there be any skills that you can develop to be able to cope up with a war-like situation while the war
Right.
is going on, right?
Right.
But there, then the idea is to also help the child understand that that war is over. You are no
Hmm.
longer on the front line. So at least
Yeah.
that makes the child realize that all right. So even if you don't have the skills, but the chances of those situations repeating are also not there. So I can actually move beyond the emotions that I've been holding on to for all these years.
Yeah. Makes sense. Thank you. That was actually very well detailed. And all of this is a part of cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy.
Yes.
Uh, all right. Okay. So now that we've spoken about everything that you've done, and thank you for actually discussing this in details, I would also want to understand that how do the other mainstream techniques, like grounding ho gaya, journaling ho gaya, uh, other mindfulness techniques ho gaya, that we as lay people are more aware of, we hear them more in our everyday life. Uh, where do they stand? Like, are they equally important, or you feel कि once you've done this part, वो सारी चीजें, like, is it required for them to be incorporated? You feel कि they're not required?
See, so again, every individual is unique, right? When you work with
Right,
clients. So, to be
right.
fair, to give a generalized response in terms of whether those techniques are effective or are not effective will
Hmm.
probably be unfair, right?
Right,
That's actually one of the reasons why we talk about cognitive knowledge psychotherapy, because the idea is that you should know all the tools and
right.
then use whatever tools are required for the client. So, if you realize by when you have done this much, this has given the client the resolution that they were looking for,
Hmm.
right? Then we are good to go. Then we don't really need anything else. But if you
Hmm.
realize that there are other day-to-day stresses that the client has, because while you may work with PTSD, ऐसा नहीं है कि the client's life will stop having problems.
Right,
So there will
right.
still be other places where they will need to learn to cope up with situations, learn to cope up with things. There would be other stressors, other triggers that are bothering them in their life. So there, grounding, breath work,
Hmm.
learning how to understand your thoughts better, being able to label your
Right,
thoughts more effectively, all of this can come very handy. So,
right.
as skills, would I want my clients to learn them? The answer is yes. Right. But do I really need the client to do all of this before they go through the work that we do? The answer is no.
No.
Right. In fact, after the work that we have done, it will become
Mm-hmm.
a lot more easier for the client to be able to incorporate this into their
All of
life.
these things. Right.
Right. Because in many ways,
Right.
when we are talking about mindfulness, right,
Hmm.
the fact that you're able to observe that memory, witness
Mm-hmm.
it as an outsider,
Hmm.
and not get sucked into it itself will be a major component
Major
of
component of
mindfulness.
my. Right.
Right. Similarly, when we talk about grounding and when we talk about healing the inner child and helping them release issues and so on, breathing will be one of the tools and technique that we will use to help the child let go of those feelings. So even
Right.
in what we have done, these are incorporated. But separately, I
Makes
would also
sense.
prefer if the client can learn them.
Makes sense. But are they, but they're not prerequisites, is what you're saying, right? Yeah.
See, okay, so let me put it this way. When a client comes to me seeking help,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the only prerequisite is the client's desire to want to change.
Right.
Any other prerequisite, my processes should help the client address it.
Right.
Right? Matlab, if I were to start telling the client that unless you are more mindful, I can't work with you.
Yeah.
So then what role am I playing in the client's life? Right?
Right.
This is also the thing about journaling and so on. So while I personally feel that journaling is a very good idea. But many a
Mm-hmm.
times in therapy context, many clients struggle with the idea of journaling because already they are struggling
Absolutely.
so much. And now you're
Yeah.
giving them one additional work that they need to complete before they come to you.
Yeah.
And if they come to you without completing that work, then we end up telling them that, you know what, agar aap nahi karoge, to how can we work with them? Then some
Right.
therapists go to an extent of saying that, but you can't be so resistant to journaling. Arre,
Yeah.
that's why they're coming to you because they're struggling with it.
Yeah. But I think this also happens because a lot of practitioners do not have alternative tools. Like they feel like, I mean, okay, journaling will help us achieve this, and if the client is not journaling, then we don't know what to do. So I think that's where also the challenge sort of comes. And
Yes.
yeah,
So that's true. And to be fair, we can say all of this, we can have this conversation because of the toolkit that we have available with us.
correct.
But to be fair to a lot of other practitioners, when they don't
Yeah,
have the toolkit, they're also trying to do the best that they can given
exactly.
the tools they have in their kitty.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But I would like to take a moment to say that me going through the entire 4 levels of cognitive hypnotic psychotherapy has just helped me become such a great professional in terms of the confidence level and in terms of the results that I see with clients. That's one. And also, I think personally, like self awareness and personal growth, personal development, which also I feel is very important to be able to do the kind of work that we are doing. I mean, there's so many times when we listen to these stories, we listen to what the other person's going through, and we end up getting triggered. I mean, because also have our own challenges, our own experiences. So, yeah, really grateful and really grateful that life led me to CHCP and you.
Thank you.
uh, okay, coming back, you did mention that, as a partner, right? We do feel the need to be able to help our partners who are struggling with PTSD. As family members, we want to be there, we want to help them be okay. Um, so, I would want to understand that what are the things that, as a community, as a family, as partners, do you think we can do to help people who are struggling or, who have PTSD? That's one. Second, I also feel that at times we do not really know how to be supportive, you know. So how do we understand that? Like, because again, like you rightly pointed out, सब clients की need बहुत different होती है. Some of them would want a lot of support. Some of them would want a lot of physical presence. Others would want space. They would want to be given time off, right? uh, if you could also help us understand how can we understand what the person in that moment needs.
Okay. So, couple of things. One, uh, rather than trying to help and
Mm-hmm.
fix the issue that they have,
Mm-hmm.
just see if you can be there to create a safe space.
Right.
Now, what safe space means in this context is that they know
Mm-hmm.
you are there. If they
Mm-hmm.
need to talk to someone, you are available. But
Mm-hmm.
you are not going to force them to talk to them. But a safe
Right.
space is not that I've created a safe space, so you now have to talk to me because it's a safe space.
Right. Right. And I think that is what a lot of us end up doing, right? Yeah.
So that will be one. That let them know that there is space for them, that
Mm-hmm.
they can have a conversation with you. When they're having a conversation with you, don't try to tell them what they can do to fix it, because to be fair, you don't
I
know.
don't know.
And
And
even if you know and you've read, they are not able to do it because they've also researched about it before having a conversation with multiple people. They're struggling with it.
mm-hmm.
Right? So ऐसा नहीं है कि there is any new piece of information that you will give them that is already not available to them. In most cases,
Mm-hmm.
they would have already researched on before having a
Right.
conversation with you.
Hmm.
But provide that space so they can have a conversation with you without being constantly told what they need to change or what they need
Right.
to do.
Right.
Second, encourage them to seek professional help. Right? Uh, Things like trauma, can people overcome them on their own? Well, some people can. Is it worth taking the chance of wanting to handle it on your own when there's help available? I think probably no.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
there's help available, there are people who can really help you address those challenges quickly. You may as well visit them and work with them. So guide them, encourage them to visit a practitioner. Remember, when they are going through these challenges and you are trying to support them and help them, you will go through your own emotional challenges.
Right.
Please seek therapeutic help.
Yeah.
In fact, my recommendation to people is that if you have people in your family around you who are
Yeah.
struggling, and
Yeah.
because of their struggles, you are going through pain, okay, telling them to go to a therapist will not be a good idea. They will feel judged.
Yeah.
A better way is you visit a therapist so that you can first learn to cope up with what's happening with you vis-a-vis with them, so that
Right.
you are not affected by it. And then talk about your therapeutic healing journey to them. That I went through this. therapy. This is how it has helped me. So you don't even have to tell them that they need to visit a therapist. Just your conversation about how the therapy has helped you become a better person,
Hmm.
has helped you cope up with the overall situation better, actually provides them with that recognition of how therapy can help them.
Right.
And it also makes them realize that you're not judging them for having a problem, because you're literally saying that I visited a therapist so because of the situation that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be the next bit that I would ask you to do. That please visit a therapist before asking others to visit a therapist. And believe me, all of us can benefit from going to a therapy, including me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that would be one thing. Um, Provide them with certain resources. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, there could be other communities of people who are going through uh,
Yeah.
PTSD syndromes or symptoms. So you may actually help them find the right support groups and be just a part of the support group. The
Right.
advantage of the support group is that they don't really think that they're seeking help, but they're having a conversation with people who have common set of problems. You know,
Right.
so a lot of times when people ask me, but Nitin, wouldn't it mean that I have to acknowledge that I have a problem? Aren't there business community forums where people go and talk about their business challenges so that they can learn from each other?
Yeah.
So why should you not be able to go into a forum where there are other people facing the same set of challenges that you're facing?
Yeah.
And it also becomes easier for people to actually accept and acknowledge that I already go to certain business networks where I share my challenges related to business. I can also be a part of other networks where there are other people with similar challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So finding those support groups, probably helping them figure out what those support groups are, right? So these are some of the tips, tricks that you can follow. But one that I would highly recommend is visit a therapist, share your
Yeah.
healing journey with the other person.
That's incredible. I think that's actually one of the best advices that we can give to people. That's a game changer, actually. Uh, you said very interesting. You said something really interesting that people are like, "Ki, why should I admit that I have a problem?" Where do you think this understanding ki I can't have a problem comes in? I know this is a little bit of a deviation from PTSD, but I would still want to sort of understand this.
See, so the thing is, most people acknowledge it in their own minds
Okay.
when they have problems. Because they see someone who has PTSD symptoms, right? If we
Mm-hmm.
come back to PTSD for a moment, they know
Mm-hmm.
they have panic attacks. They know they
Right.
have flashes. They know they are
Hmm.
reliving those memories. So there's
Hmm.
really no way that they can be in denial of this. Because if they were in
Yeah.
denial of this, they would not go through any of this.
Yeah. Makes
So they
sense.
know it.
Hmm.
The problem is acknowledging it in front of other people.
Hmm.
Because then the worry is the moment I acknowledge it, will
Hmm.
someone use it against me?
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Will they judge me? Will they think twice before seeking my help or before offering me some work? Right? So the consequences of admitting that I have a problem
Right.
generally is what stops people from admitting it to others. Like I said again, with PTSD specifically, it will be
Hmm.
very difficult for people to not recognize that they have a problem because they're actually experiencing it.
Right.
Right? In other situations where it's not PTSD, when people are actually in denial of whether they have a problem or not. Because
Mm-hmm.
denial also becomes a escape route, right? If
Yeah.
I don't deny the existence of something, I don't have to think about it, which means
Right.
whatever thought patterns, whatever worries I will have thinking about it,
Yeah.
I can avoid it. Now, this denial can be conscious, where I'm consciously choosing to ignore it. It can also be unconscious, where people just don't realize they are denying the problem that they're having.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. And is it important for people to acknowledge that they are having a problem? Like, what I mean is that they've come to you, right? Uh, as long as they're coming to you, that's okay. They're working on their symptoms. Is it like a prerequisite again that they first have to accept that this is the problem or I have a problem?
So, I would break it down, right? So, there are two parts to this story. One is whether I have a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and second, who's responsible for the problem.
Okay.
Many a time we merge and mix the two of them together, which is a problem. Any client who is coming out of their free will seeking therapy, okay, uh, in all probability paying me,
Yeah.
right? Then in that case, unless they are paying me to see my face, they've already acknowledged that they have a problem. Otherwise, why would they come to me?
Right.
Right? So the acknowledgement that there is a problem is really not as much of an issue when people visit a therapist.
Okay.
The problem that happens is most therapists expect the client to take responsibility for the problem that they're experiencing.
Okay.
Right? That if I have this problem, I am responsible for this problem.
Right.
Now, that, in my opinion, is actually far fetched. Uh, for a moment, consider someone going to a therapist saying that I was molested as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're being asked to take responsibility for being molested as a child.
Hmm.
This will be insane,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's where the confusion happens, that if people are coming to us for therapy, they've already acknowledged there is a problem. Otherwise, they wouldn't come, at least if they're coming out of their field.
Right.
Uh, they may not want to take responsibility for the problem, but to be fair, they may not even be responsible for the problem,
Makes sense.
right? What they
Yeah.
need to take responsibility for is that no matter who's responsible for the problem, the responsibility to resolve the problem is mine
Like.
because I'm struggling because of it,
Yeah.
right? So the responsibility is more about the solution and not about what the
Mm-hmm.
cause of the problem is.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. For everyone who's watching us, if you have questions or queries, feel free to put them in the comment section, and I'm sure Nitin will love to answer them for you.
Yep. So any questions, I would be more than happy to take them up and address them and answer them. Also, while we are waiting for any of your questions, we are looking at making this Wednesday lives a routine activity every week on ICHARS channels. On YouTube for sure. On Wednesday 6:30 we will have a live. We make an attempt to go live on Insta also, but sometimes Insta responds to us, sometimes Insta doesn't respond to us, so that I can't completely guarantee, so as to say. But Wednesdays, generally, we are going to look at it as a regular feature where on the iChaz YouTube channel, there would be some of the other lives that we have. On Fridays, we have the Q&A and the case discussions. That is again a regular feature that we have. If you have any ideas about topics that we want you want us to take up, please let me know. We will be more than happy to take up those topics in future interactions. Just remember that most of the work that we do with iChaz is directed towards practitioners. So when you are sharing topics with us, see that the topics also have a value for psychologists and not just for people who are seeking self-help. That's my only request. Beyond that, we are more than happy to take up any of those sessions. Though, if you share topics which are not related to psychologists, probably soon we will start conducting lives on Meet Goals as well, which will be related to self help and so on. So, we still have other platforms that we would look at. But yeah, for iChars, the focus is on practitioners.
Lovely. Okay, so while we wait for other questions or queries, I just have one last question. Um, the concept of red flags has just become extremely prevalent. It's all over social media. And you know, what they end up doing is they end up taking like isolated clips from movies and series and sitcoms and uh, rash behaviors, or, and unfortunately, sometimes even flashes and nightmares are characterized as individuals being red flags, right? Uh, so, again, I think it's a little troublesome because as youngsters, we're extremely impressionable, right? And to be fair, if you do not really understand mental health, you don't really understand a lot of what happens with mental health disorders, we end up taking it at the face value, right? So, yes, like, what is your opinion? Are there any markers wherein we can actually differentiate what genuinely is a red flag, what is something which is like a symptom of PTSD? What is your general opinion about this?
Okay, so in what context is this? Is this in the context of people in relationships seeking or looking at red flags in their partners? Is that the context, or is it a context more in terms of what I need to be careful about in my own life? What can I see as red flags?
No, I I think the first one. So I feel like there's a tendency for us to right now call everything a red flag. Not everything is a red flag, so to speak. So yeah, I think we can look at it from that point of view.
Okay, so I'll put it in a different way then. See, the thing is, your partner may have had certain problems in the past,
Mm-hmm.
may be having certain problems today,
Mm-hmm.
and if they have not had it in the past and they don't have it today, they may end up having it in the future.
Right.
Right? So, this idea that because a person has a particular problem, that person becomes a red flag
Yeah.
is, like you said, a bit troublesome, because what will you do when that person has a problem in the future?
Right.
So, I would rather look for, is the person willing to do something about whatever the challenges are in their life?
Brilliant.
Because if
Yeah.
that's true, then whether they have had a challenge in the past, they have a challenge in the present, or whether they will have a challenge in the future,
Right.
they will be supportive with you in this journey where they need help, but they are also supportive of the fact that they realize they need help and they are willing to do what needs to be done to help themselves.
Right.
As opposed to someone who doesn't have a problem, has never had a problem, but then is also not willing to seek help because they feel मेरे साथ तो कभी कुछ गलत हो ही नहीं सकता है. So for me, if there was a red flag, that would be a bigger red flag.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right? But beyond that, well, life is life. People have different challenges, and who tells you that you may not end up having a problem in future? And then imagine for a moment your partner turns around and says, "कि नहीं यार, अब तो you have this, so you have a red flag, so I can't be with you."
Yeah.
Though you are willing to seek help and do whatever
Yeah.
it needs. So
Yeah.
I would rather prefer to stay away from that red flag for a conversation. The only red flag for me would be a person who is showing a telltale sign that they are not willing to seek help even when required, and they are not willing to acknowledge even to themselves. Okay,
Right.
that there are certain areas where improvement is possible.
Brilliant. That's actually put very, very beautifully.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
I'm just checking. We've had a couple of hi hellos. So everyone who has said
Mm-hmm.
hi and hello to us on YouTube, thank you very much. I hope you have been finding this conversation insightful and interesting. If you have a question, please put it, because you'll have probably another 30-40 seconds to do it. If you don't get an answer question till then more or less after the conversation, we will get done. But if you watch this video later on and you still have a question, put it in the chat box. We will take it up in one of the future conversations that we have.
Brilliant.
Okay. And yep, I think that is what PTSD is all about. I, I hope we have been able to explain this to you in a way in which it makes sense to you. Um, if you are a practitioner, then at least it's given you some insights in terms of what you can do with clients. It's important that you're able to maintain the double disassociation. You're able to help the client reprocess the memory and also help the client deal or heal that part of the client which was stuck with that trauma, right? These are important components to keep in mind. So now the questions that we have, anything else, Komal, that comes to your mind?
Not as of now. I'm so glad that I got an opportunity to do this. There were so many things about PTSD that got answered for me as well. And like I said in the beginning, it's always incredible to have a conversation with you. Every conversation is such a learning. And yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity.
So thank you so much for hosting this session today. And for those of you who have been watching this video, um, if you are looking at developing advanced practitioner skills, maybe it's time to visit the ICHARS website, check out the courses that we offer, and then reach out to us and we can have a conversation to see how this course can help you in your journey.